I'm starting out with this log here. It's probably about 10 inches in diameter, 25 centimeters if you're on the metric system here. This is at 6 times speed, kind of a slow video, so a lot of wood to remove here. I did not remove the bark, and this bark is loose, so it does come off at you and hit you in the face. So you do want a space shield on. It's not really dangerous. Not going to hurt you or anything if you have safety glasses on, but it will scare you a little bit as these big chunks of bark fly off at you, loose bark. So you could just remove that with a draw knife or with a hatchet or something, so that you don't have to deal with that. Just removing this, getting it round. It was pretty out of balance. Here I'm using a skew chisel to make, squared it off first, and now I'm bringing it down right here, probably this next step. I'm going to bring this down to make a tenon that I can hold this with the chuck in a minute. Here I've switched over to a bowl gouge. This is mostly end grain work here, and I'm trying to remove a lot of material. You could use a skew chisel or a detail gouge here, but I find that it's easier for me for rough cut work like that, to remove a lot of material with a bowl gouge easier. And now here I'm using a bowl gouge in the same way to remove a lot of material. You have to be very careful here. You want to make sure that when you are cutting those coves that you do not get the wing of your bowl gouge into the end grain. I'll talk about that in a minute when I get back to using the bowl gouge. Here I'm back to that roughing gouge, and that's just a hurricane roughing gouge. Had that for years. It's treated me well. When you're doing side grain like this, like spindle work, you don't have to sharpen your tools as much because you're peeling wood away. You're not really cutting in grain, so you'll find that these tools will stay sharper when you're doing spindle work. Now here I'm cutting in grain, so I've got that bowl gouge, kind of a slicing cut, but I'm not really that worried about the quality of the cut yet. Just trying to get the shape. Here I'm cutting down the base with the roughing gouge real quick, just getting rid of a bunch of material. Now I'm going to go back to that bowl gouge. This is where I said you need to be careful. You want to make sure that you stop short. So I'm cutting in grain here, then I'm cutting that side grain, and I just want to make sure that I don't continue and get that wing to catch on the sides there. So I'm cutting downhill on these coves and stopping short. If you would keep going and hit the end grain, you would cause a major issue there. You get a major catch, could come flying off at you and hurt you, or break your tool or something. This is a bowl gouge, so it's pretty hefty. Probably wouldn't break the tool, but something you don't want to do. Here I'm using a parting tool, kind of undercutting the tenon. That way when I get done, I'm going to hold this with a chuck, but when I get done, I'll already have that parting tool part cut, so it'll saw off really nice. Switch now to a detail gouge. Now I'm not in the part where I'm removing a ton of material. I'm more trying to finesse it, and that's why I switched to the detail gouge. With the detail gouge, there's a little less risk of getting that wing caught in the end grain. Still want to cut downhill, so from the highest part of the material down to the lower part. Here you go, right here. Now I went to the bowl gouge just because I'm cutting mainly end grain, and I wanted a beefier tool there because I had to extend that tool over the tool rest more than I really wanted to. So I'm making sure I have taken my time, not taking a whole lot of wood off there. It's starting to take shape, just kind of cutting the corner off. A little bit of sanding right here. I think I stopped it. There's some tear out here because I was using a roughing gouge. So now I've switched over to try to make a little more slicing cuts here, try to get rid of some of that tear out. not sure that I'm having a whole lot of success here. I switch over to the skew chisel, and I think I actually do get a nice clean pass here with the skew chisel, which made it to where I didn't have to do too much sanding. That's the goal, right? Not to have to do a lot of sanding. Of course, if you're okay with sitting there and sanding and that's relaxing to you, then by all means, I mean, you can get the end product by just using your rough and gouge and doing some peeling cuts and then sanding for a little longer. Here I am trying to get the end grain. I've got this in the chuck now. You see it's being held by the chuck, so I'm just finishing up the end grain here on the top, trying to make some slicing cuts with that bowl gouge. Looks pretty good, so I'm going to add a little bit of tung oil finish. It's something I've had for years. It's not really that much tung oil. It's more of a varnish, right? So this is not a food safe product. It is a building type finish. It's called tung oil finish. Not really pure tung oil by any means. So just be aware of that if you're out shopping for that product. Well, I got done making this giant mushroom. I wasn't real pleased with it. It kind of looks like a natural mushroom, but I took it in to my wife and kids, and they're pretty honest with me. And I wasn't in love with it, and they all kind of said it looked like a lampshade. So they said it needed to be taken down a little more up here. So unfortunately, I already cut off the dovetail tenon on the end here. So I'm going to try to turn it between centers. Might have to screw a faceplate on. I'm going to try to do it on the off center so that I can maybe make it look a little less symmetrical. So we need people around us in the woodworking world to be honest with us, just like anything else in life, and be able to look at you honestly and say, I don't love it, right? You don't want to make things and everyone say, oh, it's amazing, and when in reality they know it's ugly and that your quality is not that good. So try to find some people that'll give you some honest, constructive feedback so that you can improve your skill set. Okay, so here I've got this remounted. You can tell it's off balance. I did that on purpose, so I didn't try to mount it in the center. And so I'm hoping to kind of center up what I'm cutting here on top and leave that the bottom of the mushroom, not the bottom part of the top part of the mushroom. I should try to explain. You'll see it as I continue here. Like I told you in the video there, I don't know how successful I was, because when you mount this off center, you'll see that it's just not removing the material equally everywhere. So I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it just didn't turn out as well as I wanted. Maybe you are a little more experienced in the off-center turning, and maybe there's some tricks to the trade there that I need to learn. If there's something I'm missing here, maybe leave me a comment. I'm always willing to learn from others. So this is something I haven't done a lot of, but you can see. And I'm just trying. I really don't know what I want to do here. I find that I struggle with mushrooms, just making them look natural or making them look good. Sometimes I get lucky and I turn one and I get done with it and I'm like, man, that looks good, and everyone thinks it looks good. And then other times I look at pictures of real mushrooms and make something that looks just like a real mushroom, and in the wood form, I just look at it and I'm like, ugh, I don't really like the end product. So here I'm just playing it by ear. I've spent a lot of time on this because it was such a large mushroom. And in the title, I think you two mushrooms out of one log. Well, that's why, right? I made a mushroom. I didn't really love it, so decided to make it into another mushroom. So that's how I got two mushrooms out of one log. We get done, I'll show you both pictures. You can let me know which one you like better, if you actually like either one or neither. So here I am just using the bowl gouge here, cutting downhill on that end grain. So on the left part of that, that's where the end grain is, right? So I talk a lot about grain direction here. So when you're cutting right here on the end, that's end grain, and on the left part that I've been cutting, that's also end grain. And in the middle is more side grain, right? So the more steep the angle, the more it's going to be end grain. So right here, that's all end grain. Right there where I'm cutting, that's an end grain cut, very similar to cutting a bowl, right? You need to make sure that you're doing slicing cuts. Here I'm adjusting. I didn't like how that turned out because it was so fat on one end and so thin on the other, right where I'm cutting right now. So I changed how I had it mounted in between centers. This is that end grain I'm telling you about. So you need to make sure you've got your flute closed most of the way so that you're slicing that end grain. Didn't like it again, so I'm adjusting this in between centers. So like I said, I told you this didn't work out so well for me. I struggled with it, letting you see some of the struggles. I think it's a good lesson that not every project that you turn or that you make in woodworking is going to turn out great without any complications. And sometimes you're just going to get done with the project, and you may have spent hours on it, and you're just not going to be happy with it. And to be honest, it just didn't turn out that great. And you can't let that discourage you. And it's just like in everything else in life, you know, not everything that you try is going to turn out to be successful. So you got to keep attempting though, right? So you're going to turn several projects. Some are going to turn out great, and you're going to have a few that just don't turn out great. Don't let that discourage you. Well, here's what I come up with at the end. I tried to do some off-center turning. That's a little tricky, so you'll see me in the video. I tried to move it from a little off-center here, a little off-center here, and it just, you got to get this just right. And I don't know, it was more difficult than I thought, but you can kind of tell that it's off-center a little bit. Unfortunately, it removes some of this really nice spalted character of the wood whenever I brought it in smaller, like my wife and kids wanted me to do. So I don't know. Tell me which one you think looks better. I think this does look more like a mushroom, but I don't know that I like it more. So I'll go take it in and see what the kids and the wife think. You let me know what you think. Here are both mushrooms. Let me know which one you like better. I'll be honest, I really don't love either one. It is what it is. That's why we turn. We try new things.